Hi everyone. This is Chelsea and I'm gonna react to an emergency podcast Nobody Remembers by Creepypasta Junior. So let's get started.
Some people experience very strange phenomena during their lives. Some might have a very bad string of deja vu. Others may just notice weird occurrences that seem to manifest out of nowhere. Some may actually experience oddities together, or know of people who have experienced it as well. I've always heard stories about random things happening to people, and I was always intrigued by the stories they'd share. My father actually told me an experience that he had when he was much younger. He was on a business trip, flying from LA to New York, and during his flight, the entire plane went dark. The plane began to descend rapidly, and after a few moments, the lights came back on and the flight resumed as normal. Might not seem very odd to some of you, but my father said that while this happened, everyone else in the plane didn't react at all. They just sat in their
That is
seats,
creepy.
reading books in the dark, having conversations amongst themselves, utterly oblivious to the situation. He told me he leaned over to the person next to him and asked if they had noticed anything strange. The passenger just looked at my dad like he was insane and turned away from him. Now, some of you may think my father is insane, or that he could have been asleep. I don't blame you. For most of my childhood, whenever he'd tell that story, I'd think the same thing. Then, something happened to me that I absolutely cannot explain. This incident actually happened to me twice. Once when I was a teenager, then again last night. I'll start by telling you about the first experience. After I was born, my parents moved around quite a lot. Like I mentioned previously, my father traveled quite extensively for work. We ended up settling down in a small town in Minnesota. Out of all the different states and cities I've lived in, I enjoyed Minnesota the most. There was just something peaceful about the town. My parents both worked regularly. As a result, I was left on my own quite often. This wasn't a big deal. I've been able to take care of myself for a long time now. My father still traveled frequently for work. He was some type of corporate supervisor and was requested to monitor branches of his company throughout the country. He was often gone for extended lengths of time. My mother, on the other hand, worked nights as a nurse. She worked very long hours. She'd leave in the mid-evening and then wouldn't come home until the early morning. The night that it happened, I was home alone as usual watching TV. I was maybe around 15 years old at the time, and was currently on summer break from school. I was lounging there, watching some mindless cartoon, eating a bag of chips, when suddenly, the TV seemed to glitch out. It was like the reception was fading in and out for a bit. This continued for a few minutes before it returned to normal. Then, about 10 minutes later, all the power in my house cut out. I'll be honest, even as tough as I thought I was during that time, the power going out while I was home alone made me very nervous. I got up from the couch and walked over to the nearby window and glanced out of it. I was checking to see if it had been raining, to see if that caused the outage. It was completely dry outside. Dark, but dry.
I'd be scared too.
I figured it was probably time to head to bed. It had to be getting close to midnight. As I was returning to my room from the living room window, I glanced over and noticed that the TV was still on. I wondered how I hadn't noticed before. The screen was black but glitched with static every few seconds. I set the bag of chips down and looked at the screen a bit closer. After a few seconds, a loud tone echoed from the speakers. It was deafening.
That's creepy.
I found myself recoiling from the TV and covering my ears. The tone dissipated after a minute.
What the
Once I regained my
heck?
senses, I looked back to the screen and noticed an emergency broadcast notice in black and
That
white.
is creepy.
The sound of a microphone being switched on could be heard, before a voice began to speak. Attention. This is an emergency broadcast.
What?
We have been notified that something is threatening the security of the citizens. This is not a test. This is not a drill. Please keep your doors and windows secured, and under no circumstances.
What?
The screen cut out almost immediately
This
after
is
the voice stopped talking.
creepy.
I was left sitting there in silence for a few moments.
Oh my god.
That was strange all by itself. But a little less than 20 minutes later, there was a knock at my front door. I'll tell you right now, hearing that after watching that broadcast sent my heart crashing to the floor. I walked over to my front door and looked through the eye hole.
Who
I
was
couldn't see
that?
whoever it was that was knocking on the door.
Who's at the
It
door?
was just a darkened chest in front of the eye hole. The reason I knew that it was a person was because I could see faint bits of light from the night sky, casting around the corners of this person's body. What was even more worrisome was that they only knocked 3 times, then just stood there, waiting.
What?
If I would have opened the door, the person would have been right in my face. I went and grabbed the kitchen phone to call my mom.
Who is
This happened a bit before cell phones. But when I did, there was no dial tone through the receiver.
Exactly.
I crept around to my bedroom, which had a pretty good line of sight from the front door to the window.
Yeah.
Taking care not to trip, I made my way in there and peeked through the curtains.
No.
There were so many of them. There had to have been at least 15 people standing in various parts of my front lawn, the street, and near my front door. I watched wide-eyed as they all looked exactly the same. Just vague figures standing in the dark. I backed away from the window and quickly rushed to the bathroom, locking myself inside. My mother found me the next morning when she got home.
No.
I must have fallen asleep while I was hiding in there.
No.
She knocked on the door repeatedly, and at first, I thought one of them had gotten inside somehow. But after she announced herself, I cracked the door open just a little bit, and I saw her. I told her about everything. The people, the broadcast.
Oh my gosh.
But she just gave me an odd look and told me that the power hadn't gone out at all.
That's creepy.
I tried to convince her that I was telling the truth, but she led me to the kitchen and showed me that all the clocks were on and accurate, which wouldn't have been the case if the power truly had gone out.
That's creepy.
Since that night, I've thought about it often. I've tried to find other people who might have experienced it or something similar. Then, last night, it happened again. It had been numerous years and I had long since moved out and gotten my own place. I had gotten home after a particularly taxing day at work and slumped onto my couch. I had the weekend off, so I intended on catching up on all the shows I had missed during the week. Sadly, that didn't happen, as I dozed off shortly after laying down.
Oh my gosh.
I woke up to the loud signal tone emanating from my TV. Bleary-eyed, I looked at the screen and the voice once again came through. The man that spoke sounded exactly as he did all those years ago.
No.
Just as I thought to retrieve my cell phone
so
and record the
creepy.
strange broadcast, it ended. I got up from the couch and rubbed my eyes. I looked down at my phone and began to search for any strange occurrences on social media. None of my friends or relatives near me said anything. As I was in the middle of sending my 12th message to my coworker, a knock sounded on my front door. I froze. I could feel my hands beginning to tremble as I turned towards the door. My front door doesn't have an eye-hole, but it does have a glass window near the top. I slowly walked over to the door and stood on my tiptoes to peek through the window. I could see them. All of them.
Oh gosh.
There were hundreds this time. all standing at different intervals throughout my yard, driveway, street, neighbor's yard. They
I
look
think
like
it's
black cardboard cutouts
aliens.
of people arranged all
I
over
think
the
it's
place.
aliens.
My eyes then drifted downward, and there was one standing a few centimeters away from my front door. If it had been any closer, it would have been inside my house. I got a decent look at it, and quickly realized that they weren't just shadows. It had a
No.
face, though its skin was varying shades of gray and black. Sunken, dull white eyes stared straight ahead, almost like it were in a trance. Before I could discern any more detail, the thing
It's
looked up at me, peeking
aliens.
through the window. When it did, I fell
What?
backwards onto my back. I ran to the bathroom, locked the door, and called the police. I didn't want to say monsters were outside, but I told them that I spotted some suspicious-looking individuals.
This is so
After around 30
creepy.
minutes, there was another knock on my door. I snuck out of the bathroom and walked over to the door, peeking through the window once again. The police were standing outside with their car parked in the street. I opened the door, only a sliver, and greeted them. They asked if I was the one that made the call, and I confirmed it. They told me they looked around, but there was no sign of anyone nearby. I thanked them for the help, and they left. Look, I know how all this sounds. Like the ramblings of a mentally ill person. Trust me, I know. All night I thought that might be the case. That there was something wrong with my brain and I desperately needed help. That was until this morning when I got up. I walked out into my living room and glanced over at my front door. There was a handprint on the glass above my door. It wasn't human. I don't know if any of you have experienced anything like this before or what, but I'm starting to worry that if this happens again, there will be more of them. And they won't simply knock on the door. Next time.
Oh my god. That was an emergency broadcast. Nobody remembers Creepypasta by Creepypasta Jr. If you guys want me to do any more reactions, like scary reactions or any type of video, let me know down in the comments down below. Till next time, bye guys.